Hey everyone, and welcome to a new episode of NFIHammer. So if you've been following along, this is my 5th week that I've been starting in this hobby. Prior to this, I haven't really done any painting or miniature work at all. My wife got me a starter set that came with about a dozen paints, and then as well as my first 2 models. Since then, I've just picked up some really cheap models from the Warhammer Imperium magazine. They have like really great value, or from eBay. But this is actually my first set that I have actually bought myself, like an official Warhammer box. So it's the Recruit Edition that comes with some Necron Warriors, which I've already painted. You can see that in my earlier video, as well as some Ultramarines and a Royal Warden, and that's what I'll be painting in this video. So coming on from the Overlord that I did in my last video to celebrate 100 subscribers, I felt like a Royal Warden is kind of a similar sort of vibe, but actually probably a little bit easier. So I was kind of excited to see if the skills that I'd learnt doing the Overlord would translate into the Royal Warden. Here I've just been showing you the unboxing of the Recruit Edition. Hopefully this is helpful for anyone who's thinking about picking it up. So I'm just going to start off by cutting it off the sprue. I'm getting way more comfortable with the clippers. It's taking me, I think the first one I did, it took me like an hour or something to, cut my first model out and stick it together. So in the 5 weeks, I've really gotten a lot faster at it. As well as, like, these ones are actually, I think, easier than the ones that you start off with because it's only a single model. So you don't have to worry about, remembering what number correlates to, like, what part. You can just kind of cut them all out, clean them up, and then stick them together at the end. So in a way, I would kind of recommend this stuff to beginners, and the model is also a little bit larger than the other ones, so it's kind of a little bit easier to work with. You can see here though, I'm still struggling a little bit because this spine has a little rod that goes through the armor, and I just couldn't get it through for a while, but eventually I got it there. And now that we've got all the parts free and I've cleaned them up using the hobby knife that I bought myself recently, it was time to kind of assemble them all together. I did kind of struggle a little bit with this part. So basically his 3 cords from his back connect to his gun, but the connector there is a really small little pinhole, and then you're also trying to get his arm that wedges into the gun, into the arm socket, and then his spine and back kind of comes through the middle, and then you push the chest in to hold it all together. So it's kind of, probably would be helpful if you had 4 hands, but unfortunately I've only got 2, so it did take a while to kind of get it all together. Here, as you can see on the left there, the belt thing connecting to the gun has fallen off, and then I dropped the model, so I definitely don't recommend you doing that. So it's kind of just a bit of like a jigsaw, a 3-dimensional jigsaw puzzle. So yeah, still got a way to go, but this is it finalized. You can see it put all together here. I haven't bothered using any glue. I haven't found that the pushpin ones have really needed it, or at least not for my skill level. So here I'm trying a different trick with the spray paint. I'm just putting it on some old cardboard and just giving it a bit of a spray outside, along with the other models that were in the recruit set, which I'll show later in another video. So this is the finished product. I think I ended up putting too much spray paint, as you can see. So now I'm just starting with the Runelord Brass, because most of the model is like armor pieces, and I like to paint those armor pieces with this brass color. I feel that it's that traditional Necron look that I'm trying to go for, but obviously feel free to use whatever color you want. This is just what I want. So Artemis has come to visit. A lot of people have been asking about the cats, so now's a good time to introduce you. So this is Artemis. He's a 2-year-old male grey tabby rescue, but he's more akin to like a dog or an otter or a weasel than a cat. He's very playful and adventurous and has unlimited energy. He's looking over there at his sister, which is Luna, She's the brown tabby. She's 5. She is a very different personality, very, quiet, but very sweet. So yeah, that's my cats. For the people commenting in the comments below, yeah, I'm glad you got to meet them. So now I'm back to my painting, now the cats have been appeased with some attention and love. So I don't know why my camera decided to unfocus here, but this was the longest part of everything that I found. It's just applying the brass to the model. I'm also noticing that my brushwork's getting a little bit better, so I'm not getting it in areas that I don't want it to as much, which was a very common occurrence early, which meant that I had to go back and clean up a lot more, whereas now I'm kind of like avoiding the spine, avoiding the weapon, so it's kind of easier. Now with the Leadbelcher, I'm just applying that to the weapon. So anywhere around like the edges and this kind of corrugated, I don't know if that's the right word, cord, one with the texture, as well as like the tips and spikes, are all going to be steel. I also decided to kind of paint these kind of circle rims steel as well, just to give it a bit of a difference from the barrels that are black, and hopefully that'll make the green gorse weapon stand out some more. I'm also switched to my old $2 Kmart brushes. I find that they're harder to use, because they kind of apply too much paint, but it's kind of nice to not have to go back and keep refilling the brush every 2 minutes. So I found that sometimes when the mood's right, I can just use this, and it works pretty well. So I'm just doing the connector part, and I realized that the cord's unconnected again, so I'll have to come back later. I'm also doing all the pistons, kind of all the inner core, so not the armor plated pieces, but kind of the joints as well. So now this is what kind of separates the Overlord and the Royal Warden, which I'm doing now with the other Necrons, is they have this gold colour. So even the Immortals, they kind of only stuck to the silver. So you can tell that these are moving up the ranks of the Necron Legion, because they've got like this more ornate plating, jewelry thing. I kind of watered the paint down a little bit too much, in my opinion, but I didn't want to like ruin the details and the leaf, so I did have it watered down a little bit. So I had to apply a couple of coats, and then getting on the inside of this was actually really difficult. So in my Overlord video, the cape actually fell off, which enabled me to paint the inside, whereas that didn't happen here. And I'm also kind of painting his decorative, I don't know what you'd call that, necklace, gold as well. It has some intricate carvings on it as well, so I was trying to preserve that by doing a thin layer of paint. I didn't want to kind of overdo it and lose those details. I also was going to start painting the little eyes of these plates red, as in red ruby gems that I did with my Overlord. But in the end I decided not to, because the dots here are really small, whereas the Overlord actually had gem-sized ones, and then I thought it might end up looking worse if I did that, and I can always go back later and paint it red if I feel like it, because I do think kind of having the gems really made the Overlord really interesting, but at the same time I don't really want to kind of ruin this one by having these red dots that kind of just look cheap in the cape. So yeah, it's a little bit torn. Let me know what you think in the comments. Have you done something similar, or have you just kind of left this one to be just the original texture? So now I'm doing some Runefang Steel, and I'm just applying this to the head, basically. Everywhere else in this I've used the Leadbelcher one, so it's really just the face that I thought could do with the extra shine, a little bit extra pop in the detail. I was trying to avoid getting too much in the eyes, because I wanted the menacing look of the dark soulless eyes of the Necron, and also because I used the black spray paint from before, it does require a few more coats to kind of get a good coverage, otherwise the black does still kind of show through, which is not ideal, which is why I sometimes end up using thicker paints, because I don't want to go through the effort of just multiple coats, but then you end up losing a lot of the detail in the model because the thick paints will cover them up. So it's one of those things that slower is better, but because I only get a few hours a week to kind of do this, I get a bit excited. I've also just picked out a few areas of the weapon to just kind of highlight with the lighter silver, just to make it stand out a little bit from the kind of the steel parts of the weapon at the front. And then I thought this black bit here I'll make silver for some reason. It was an impromptu painting decision. And yeah, I don't know why. I'm just kind of going over some of the Leadbelcher now with a lighter colour. So now I'm getting the Nuln Oil that I got from the Imperium magazine. So this is one of the few paints that I have that didn't come with the starter set that you can see in the background. Here I'm using one of my new fancy brushes, but with the long stem, it's very hard to get any paint coming out of this. It's kind of very, surprisingly, even though it's got a long brush, which you would think that would have a lot of paint stored in it, it really doesn't hold anything. And yeah, it was kind of very difficult. I should have used one of my other brushes, I think, for this. But you can see the Nuln Oil, because it's a black shade, it's kind of pooling into the crevices, and then that's kind of making those little details kind of really pop out. And then I'm also just doing his necklace thing with it, and you can see the blacks going in there. And I'm also doing the face. I'm just picking up any loose, extra superfluous Nuln Oil, and I'm just picking it up and putting it somewhere else so that it doesn't kind of become too dark. But I'm kind of liking how it's coming together. I like the gold sigil in the middle and how the edges are in gold. I think that's kind of like a cool look. I haven't done that one before, but I think it really stands out. And now I'm just applying that Nuln Oil to the weapon. This is actually from a later scene. You might notice some other things have been painted, but I realized I should have done this at this time. So just apply the Nuln Oil to the gun. So now with the Corax White, I'm just applying this everywhere that I want the green to go. So I'm also, actually I lied. So the first place I put it was on the head. So I've seen like these Necrons, like the Immortals with the white stripe down the forehead, kind of like a mohawk but just of white paint, and I think it looks really cool. So I've been doing that for this guy as well. And then here I'm just colouring in the dots with the white paint and kind of just leaving everything else. This is one of the parts I've been struggling with. I kind of end up putting the white too much or not enough, and it doesn't really stand out. So here it's kind of just targeting the dots and nothing else, and I can do that pretty well. But then when I actually try and do like a circle around them, that's where I kind of struggle. And here I'm just doing the underside of the cord connecting the gun, and I'm just trying to get in between the legs here. It's a bit of an awkward shot. So here I'm tossing up in my mind if I should do more white paint or not. But so I've decided to do 2 out of the 3 cords, but I'm left the middle one black, just because that's like connects from his spine, that's black, into the weapon, and then 2 gauze things. So you can see I've kind of coloured in the circles a little bit more, which I kept flip-flopping on, but you can see here I've kind of coloured it in a little bit more, just to kind of give it more of a overflow rather than just the dots. Again, I'm not really sold. If someone has any better ideas, please let me know in the comments, because yeah, I really can't decide which way to go. And then I need to connect the weapon, the barrels to the main chamber of the weapon, then this little connecting part, and then these 2 out of 3 cords here that are painted white. I think if I did all 3, I think that's just too much. So I think here with the extra black cord, even though I did end up getting some Tesseract Glow on it, I think looks alright. Now I wanted to do the skull. So I don't know if you've noticed, but down the bottom of the model is this skull, which I thought was really cool. None of the other models that I've done so far. So here I'm just kind of applying this Rakarth Flesh. So this is the other paint. So these are the 2 paints, Nuln Oil and this, that I got in the Imperium magazine. But it's come in really handy for things like this. Anything that's bone is handy, because I didn't have a colour like that. So now I've got Agrax Earthshade, and I'm just going to apply this over the whole model, all the brass, any of the joint silver. And what it does is you can kind of see here that it's kind of plasticky looking, and then I apply a coat and it kind of just fills in some of the crevices and just gives it a more metallic look, like a more battle worn, like it's not straight out of a factory, it's not just like one tone, it kind of gives it a bit of depth to it. And then I thought it'd be cool to use Mephiston Red. I've been calling it Mephisto Red because I watch a lot of Marvel stuff and Mephisto's a Marvel character, but it's actually called Mephiston Red, so apologies that I've been calling the wrong thing. But you can see here I'm just applying it to kind of the skull. It has like half a brain sticking out, and I know it wouldn't make sense for a brain and a skull to exist at the same time because the skull would require a lot of time. The brain would have been disintegrated long before then, but I thought it looked cool. So here's the finished product. I was really happy with it, and I was kind of really impressed by how quickly I was able to kind of put it together. Definitely learning a lot of valuable skills, and it's due to a large part of all the comments that I'm getting from below and everyone's encouragement. It's been really wonderful to just be inundated with like positive vibes and helpful suggestions. So yeah, let me know what you'd like to see next. Yeah, thanks everybody, and thanks for watching.